part of the work that I do with my clients is to think, okay, what adjustments would make things easier? So there's two strands really. Part of it is about self-confidence. It's like, it's okay to be you. It's okay to have this side of you, this neurodiversity. There's nothing wrong with it. You're not doing anything wrong. You know, this is the way you relate to the world, and you can do it, but perhaps the world can support you a little bit as well.
Welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. This is a show presented by Heart and Solutions Counseling Agency. We release new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central and encourage you to batch up that laundry, put away the dishes, plan for the week ahead, or do any other task that might seem daunting while you give our show a listen. You might just be encouraged to call your therapist, connect with this week's guest, or seek out those services you've been considering for a while but haven't made the commitment to yet. If you are in the state of Iowa and are in need of mental or behavioral health counseling, give us a call at 1-800-531-4236. Enjoy the show.
All right. Hello and welcome back to You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Dr. Julie Johnson. I'm the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions, Mental Health Counseling and Behavioral Health Counseling here in Iowa.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt. I am our vice president in charge of the behavioral health department. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are a podcast designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
Our guest today is a return guest. We have Liessa Callaghan back with us on the show today. Liessa is a psychodynamic counselor doing services out of the UK, working with a wide variety of different people, and recently has come out with some new blog posts about neurodivergent adults. So we're very interested in hearing and learning more from Liessa today. Welcome, Liessa. Thanks for being back.
Thank you for asking me back.
Wonderful. So give us a little update on anything new with your practice, and then how did you come to start writing recently about neurodivergence in adults?
Yes, I have been. I've been working in my private practice, and I'm quite busy with lots of different clients. And some of my clients have come because they want to explore neurodiversity, particularly. And it's been really interesting work. And I think psychodynamic counselling really works well with that, because we look back at the past and development, and we also look at the inner world and patterns of behaviour, the environment around you. And quite a lot of my clients who have got neurodiversity fit really well into that style. I would say they often have feelings of not being quite, not fitting in, or feeling burnt out, or very exhausted. And so what we do is we look at what stuff that's coming from them and anxiety, and what stuff might be environmental. So it's very interesting work, actually.
Yeah. So did you seek out working with the neurodivergent population, or did they kind of just happen to come across you and it became like a big population that you started working with?
It's just kind of gravitated over time that people have come, and it's quite often it's younger women with neurodiversity that I've been working with, and they've just come because something doesn't feel quite right, or they may have had a diagnosis recently and they just want to understand themselves more, or they might be feeling very emotionally dysregulated, and they want that to stop. They want to feel more in control of themselves and to understand what's causing all of this anxiety or distress.
Now, when you talk about being neurodivergent, for anybody listening who goes, what is that? What are we talking about? Can you give us a little breakdown of what we might be talking about?
So we could be talking about people with autism, or we could be talking about people with ADHD, so attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or variants of that, or sometimes dyslexia falls under that umbrella as well. And all of these can have a massive impact on how you relate to the world, and people can feel very different from the main population, and they feel like I'm trying so hard to be the same as everyone else, but I just can't do it, and something always feels wrong.
I feel like that's good because a lot of people, even myself, my brain instantly thinks of autism when I think of neurodivergent. So it's interesting that there are, I mean, I wouldn't have thought of dyslexia even as one of them. What kind of differentiates like neurodivergence from just other diagnoses? Like what makes it a neurodivergent diagnosis?
They all sort of fit under the same umbrella. Quite often, someone with neurodiversity has more than one diagnosis. So you might have autism and it might be present with dyslexia, or it might be present with dyspraxia, or you might have autism and ADHD, which is now, it comes under the umbrella of AUDHD, autism and attention deficit hyperactivity. So I think the more research that is being done, the more understanding there is of that the brain is just wired differently and interpretation is different, and the way you relate to the world can be slightly different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as more and more people speak out and bring awareness to the neurodivergence in our communities, where it's not always obvious. There are so many people walking around who have kind of molded ourselves to the way that society works or the expectations that others have of us. And so there are so many people that we might say, oh, I didn't know that you had ADHD. I didn't know that you were on the autism spectrum. And because I think that there is still stereotyping of, okay, autism looks like this, right? Autism might have this level of care that's necessary. And so when we start getting into the spectrum, and the DSM-5, the most recent DSM, introduced the idea of autism as a spectrum. And I think it's taken that, however long it's been, 14 years or so since the last text revision, for that to kind of come across in the general understanding of society that there is this spectrum. Because that when we think about the history of counseling and mental health services, that's a very short period of time where we've seen and understood autism as a spectrum. And so there was kind of this black and white thinking before of, well, autism either looks like this, right, and has a higher level of care, or a person doesn't have it or isn't affected or isn't on the spectrum. So I think that's just so interesting, the developments over the last few years.
So what's really interesting about the diagnosis of autism is everyone is so different, everyone presents differently, and people often come into the room and they're exhausted from masking and trying to fit in with society and the expectations of society. And they often come in and say, what's wrong with me? And there's nothing wrong with you. You're just really exhausted from constantly looking at other people and trying to work out what's going on, what am I expected to do in this situation? And so there's a lot of paddling going on underneath and a lot of work that maybe even they're not conscious of, which does lead to burnout in the end, because it's really hard work kind of trying to fit in when your world makes sense differently to you than it does to the general population, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, that goes along with that one of the blog posts you have written that we can find on your website, The Hidden Cost of Masking, Anxiety and Burnout in Neurodivergent Adults. For those who aren't aware, can you kind of explain what masking is and then how that does cause anxiety and burnout?
Yeah, well, masking is there's a feeling that you don't want to show yourself to the world as you are, or that you can't show yourself as you are. The differences, they feel too much to share with other people. So the mask would be that you come in, you achieve really highly, or you pretend you understand exactly what's going on in a social situation, but your authentic you inside is like, I don't get this. I don't get why these people are talking like this and finding this funny. What does this mean? Or I've heard clients say, I don't understand small talk. What's the point of small talk? Let's just get into the conversation. So they find it really difficult to think about what to say as they're getting to know people. And that can lead to them overcompensating or withdrawing and feeling really sad and isolated when actually they want to be involved. They are really sociable and they are really empathic to others, but they're just not into that kind of whole, oh, let's get to know you, let's do the small talks. It doesn't feel authentic, but they'll sit there and they'll look like they're joining in and laughing because they're watching everyone else laughing and go, oh, right, okay, I'm supposed to laugh now. But they don't get it in the same way. And it can feel really stressful. It's like you're traveling in the world without a roadmap when everyone else seems to be following the map really easily.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the imagery or the kind of way of thinking about it as if you've got a book in your original native language that you grew up speaking and you grew up reading, and you read that book, the sense of ease in reading that book, right? Our minds can kind of go, okay, now I'm reading these words on this page, but I'm not saying, okay, that's a letter A and it makes an sound. Okay, that's a letter G. It makes a G sound. Does it make a G sound in this word, right? It's got an O next to it. So does it do a go or a G or a J, right? And so if we're reading a book in our native language that we have grown up reading, we read that in a different way, and it's less tiring, it's less mental loading than if we're picking up a book in a new language. So, I took Spanish language in high school, so I can read some Spanish language, right? But it's a completely different experience reading something in Spanish than it is for me reading something in English, because when I'm reading something in English, I'm not getting into all of those little things. My brain can just kind of go, oh, this is what this sentence means, and can interpret it and apply it and use it. But when I'm reading something in Spanish, if I'm reading directions in Spanish, for example, I'm looking at each letter. I'm going like, oh yeah, there's a there's a mark above that letter. That means it's this. And I'm going through each word and trying to interpret each word. And I think that's where it can feel like, hey, this feels really natural, or it seems like it's really natural to other people. It's like they're reading a book in English and I'm reading this book or this situation in Spanish. And so while, yes, I can understand it and I can read it and interpret it and act according to what I'm reading, it's much more difficult in any given situation.
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're talking about is fluency. So with autism, or maybe even with ADHD, when you're trying to people please and fit in, it's like a social fluency that just isn't natural in the same way.
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of times when we feel like, oh, I don't understand these things, or I can understand them, but gosh, why doesn't it exhaust other people, right? In the same way that it exhausts me to think about, what are my eyebrows doing? And am I supposed to sound this way, right? Or what context am I using here for this situation, and trying to guess everybody else's, ways of experiencing what we're doing. And doing all of those things can, a lot of times, if we don't understand that, hey, that's how my brain works. And so that's not, okay, I'm bad at this and this and this. It's I do things, or I think things differently. And that's what causes this to make sense to me and this to not make sense to me. It's what causes this to feel natural. And well, of course I would do that. And something else to feel like, okay, well, I know I'm supposed to do that, so I'm going to do that. It's a totally different feeling. And a lot of times we blame ourselves if we don't understand it, right? So we think, well, I'm wrong. I can't, why can everybody else do that? I can't do this. Or a lot of times neurodivergent children will be labeled as lazy. And well, you've got so much potential, right? Especially twice exceptional children, to go, you've got so much potential, right? You're so gifted. You understand context so well. Why don't you do your homework? Right? Why does it take you so long to do these tasks? It's like you're not even trying. And so those labels of, well, you're just lazy, right? You can do it. You should be able to do it. Everybody else can do it. You're being lazy. Those labels can really, really follow children into adulthood. And now it becomes kind of part of identity in adulthood, which causes so many challenges.
Yes, and then that becomes internalized, like you say, and the belief is this is all my fault and I've got to sort it out, and I've got to do everything differently, and if I could do it differently, life would be amazing and perfect. And part of the work that I do with my clients is to think, okay, what adjustments would make things easier? So there's two strands, really. Part of it is about self-confidence. It's like, it's okay to be you. It's okay to have this side of you, this neurodiversity. There's nothing wrong with it. You're not doing anything wrong. This is the way you relate to the world, and you can do it, but perhaps the world can support you a little bit as well. So it could be just having a little bit of structure at work and things explained in a more kind of structured way that gives you steps to follow, and then you're fine. You can get on with tasks, and your confidence is there. Or it can be having the confidence to be able to say, I'm not quite getting this in this social setting, and to feel that it's okay to be different and that others can bring you in and understand you rather than you having to fit in with them all the time.
Do you guys watch the show Love on the Spectrum on Netflix? Have you seen it before?
No,
Like an adult, they're like young adults, and they all are on the autism spectrum, and it's like a dating show. Like they get matched and go on dates with other adults on the spectrum. But the new season just came out, and one of them, Connor is his name, and he was talking about how his girlfriend, who's also on the spectrum, like tells jokes and is sarcastic, and he doesn't get it or doesn't think it's funny. And he feels like she's making fun of him. So that's kind of what that reminds me of, what you guys are talking about. And he had to like have that conversation with her, like, I don't understand your humor. So I'm sure it's hard, especially when you're on the spectrum, to have those conversations. When people come to you for counseling about masking and have that anxiety and burnout, how do you like help them work through that and have those like harder conversations with people that they're not understanding what's going on?
Yeah, well, it's not about me telling people what to do. It's got to come from that person themselves, and part of that is understanding yourself and maybe understanding why it feels difficult to share that part of your life, or maybe just working out what's going to work for you. It's no good to me to say, oh, I suggest you do this, because if it doesn't work, you're just going to end up feeling like a failure. So it's a real exploration of everyone individually. What makes you tick? What do you find really easy? What do you find hard? What hurts actually when, what makes you feel really uncomfortable in social situations? And then it's very bespoke of working together. We kind of almost unravel what's going on and then think about what could be different that would make you feel more confident in that situation, happier. And sometimes that can include medication as well. Sometimes it's really hard. If you've got attention deficit and you're struggling to maintain attention, it can be that sometimes medication can help you on, just regulate yourself emotionally, or attention wise, and that can just calm things down and give you a bit of space. So, and if that's the choice that a person makes, I support them, because it's not my place to say take medication or not, but we explore the impacts and how things are changing for you and whether they are. So it's a whole real spectrum of work. It's so individual according to what everyone brings.
Yeah, I really like what you said about self-acceptance, because that really, the idea that our needs as an individual person are valid, and that we can ask for those things, or that we can do those things for ourselves, can be life-changing, just that idea alone. So, in my mind, I'm thinking of just so many different examples of that, right? Like, for example, like if you look in our silverware drawer at home, we have we have a space that has chopsticks in it, and we do not have any big spoons. Now, our set came with big spoons and little spoons. And as a family, we realized like we hate the big spoons, and we always pull them out and then are annoyed every time. And we were able to say, hey, we don't have to have big spoons in our house. We can get rid of those big spoons. We don't have to have them, right? But I think before the idea of, hey, our needs and what we like and don't like and what makes us comfortable and uncomfortable, those are valid guide marks in what we do. Before that, we had said, we'll keep them because there's a spot for them, right? And because the set came with that. We talked in a previous episode about our family has 3 different kinds of toothpaste because sensory wise, toothpaste is very personal, and gritty is not going to work for me. And certain flavors, right, are not going to work for others. So being able to say, no, this is uncomfortable to me, right? My daughter would always fight us on taking a shower. Hated it. Until we found out, okay, what do you hate about it? Well, my hair is wet, and then it gets everything else wet, and then I can't like lay down on my bed. I can't sit on a chair. My clothes get wet, right? So we were like, oh, Amazon, we got a bear hat that's a towel hat, right? And we put it on her head after the shower. And now it's like she's not being overwhelmed by the sensory factor of wet hair, right? Wet hair can be extremely uncomfortable when you've got those sensory sensitivities. So I think that sometimes it feels like, well, am I allowed to not like, having wet hair, right? Yeah, you are allowed to not like that because as soon as we can say, I don't like that, that's not comfortable to me, right? Or for a lot of people, camera, right? Being on camera during a Zoom meeting. There are so many people who say it's not comfortable to me to be on camera because I'm very aware now of what my face is doing and what, all of these other factors. And what I really want to do is just talk about the subject at hand for the meeting, right? Get the information, give the information. And so being able to say, yeah, that's a valid thing. That's not you being difficult. That's not you being, insubordinate or not wanting to connect with people. That's you saying, I'm going to do my best work if I am comfortable. And with the bear hat, right? I am going to take more showers if my hair doesn't have to feel like that afterwards. And so I think it comes down to so many different things. The foods that we eat, right? There's so many times where it's like, well, as a child, you're supposed to eat your vegetables and you're supposed to eat your fruits and you're supposed to eat. And there are these power struggles that happen in families because it's like, well, this is what we're eating as a family, right? And so everybody needs to eat the same thing. We eat 3 different meals because we all are different people and we need different things. And so that validation that you were talking about, it's just so important because the first step in solving or creating a life that accommodates the things that are comfortable or uncomfortable to us is to be able to say, that's not comfortable to me. That's something that I want to make an accommodation or build something around.
Yeah, and you're so right that it is about making accommodations, but what I'm hearing from you is that somebody has to receive that information and accept it and understand it and not just fight back and just say, this is the social norm, so we're going to carry on the same. And that's where the confidence part comes in, or the self-knowledge to know, actually, if I had this accommodation, I would be able to do this. And if you're not getting that, it's not, and people are not understanding that. Are they the right people? Is this the right organization for me? Can I find somewhere else that is going to listen and understand me more? Rather than this must be all my fault and I'm a failure. It's actually, can we find a middle ground here where we can work together? That fan's really annoying me. Could we just turn it off and then I can concentrate on my work? Can we do something different? It's small things that can make such a massive difference.
So a lot of times when your clients come to you, do they typically know like that they're experiencing anxiety and burnout, or that they're having sensory overload? Or do you kind of have to like problem solve with them and figure out what's going on behind the scenes? Or is it more just like they know, but they're struggling with communicating that?
A lot of times they come and they're not quite sure what's wrong, but they know they feel exhausted, and they know they feel emotionally drained. And they want to know more about why, or sometimes they have theories about why, but like I say, it's often more theories based on what they need to do to change, rather than the kind of looking at more broadly at everything, the environment, the relationships, how they communicate, how people communicate with them. And it's not always about making massive changes. It's just like small changes. You know, some people come and say, well, I never talk to my boss, and it's like, well, they find it really difficult to articulate and say what they need. So sometimes we spend time in sessions rehearsing what they need, or it can be sometimes a misinterpretation. So like I've had clients coming in and just misinterpreting their view of instructions, or somebody may make a throwaway comment and they take it on board in a way. And when we unpick it, so an example would be, you know, you've got to work really hard in your career, but you've got to do it yourself. Only you can do it. So we kind of talked about it in this particular scenario of, well, I'm working with you on my own in this room, but I have a support network. I have other counsellors that I can talk to generally, not personally about you, but generally about counselling and the struggles and difficulties and the exciting parts. And I have a supervisor who can advise me and give me support. So I have my network, and you're trying to do this whole career building entirely by yourself, but without sharing your needs with anyone. So it was that small piece of language when we unpicked it, and they went, oh, okay, so I don't have to do it all myself. I've got to be the driver, but I can have support on the way. And that was a really insightful moment for that person of, you know, there are things that I can do differently. And that is just one individual point. And there's loads of those different ways that people just need support that's very individualized, and it's just an exploration rather than a kind of, if you follow this and this, all will be well.
Absolutely. That, you know, hyper individualism, right? That sense of, okay, if it's going to be done, it's got to be me. I think sometimes can really come from a sense of, or experiences where our needs are not met. So where whether we're expressing those needs in a way that other people can understand and meet them or not, we've had experiences where we have expressed it in any way, and those needs were not met. Or we've gotten shamed for having those needs, right? I mean, even the public school system, if you say you've got to go to the bathroom and it's during a test, right? Nope, you can't. You're just going to try to miss out on this test or whatever it is. And so, you know, we kind of learn from societal expectations or from how we were treated as children when we did express a need, that either I can't express the need well because when I do, right, that need isn't met. So we either internalize that and say, well, it's me, it's my fault that I'm not meeting that, or we learn learned helplessness, right? So we learn even if I do express it well, the other person isn't going to understand or care or meet that need. And so if we've kind of created or experienced a world and have a worldview where our needs are not going to get met by anybody other than ourselves, then it makes sense where we don't ask other people for help, where we don't look for connection to meet those needs, which makes it very difficult to say to our boss, hey, this is what I really need in order to do my job well, right? Like I need to have clear directions written down. Or we love it, Chris and I love it when somebody will say, hey, I followed the directions and like, here's a screenshot of what the thing did. Like, these directions didn't work. Or, hey, I followed the directions, but when you say this, like, what do you actually mean? Do you mean this or do you mean this? And that makes those directions so much stronger, because then we say in the directions specifically, it's going to look like it might mean this. It does not. It means this other thing, right? And so that feedback is so helpful when we're working with others, as a person who wants to make accommodation, right? Because the end goal isn't that we all do things the same way. The end goal is that we get the things done. And so it is so helpful in that situation to have that feedback, but we also understand why it can be so challenging to give that feedback, because we're expecting maybe a negative response when we communicate those needs.
Yeah. And I don't think this is a problem just for people who have neurodiversity. I think a lot of people can struggle to get across what they need and to get the accommodation that they need. But if you've got this extra layer of anxiety and feeling that your needs are not going to be met already, it makes it that much harder to approach and take the risk and try and get what you need to do, whatever it is you need to do.
Well, and a lot of people, it seems, would need like a support person or a person who's going to listen and do what they're asking to do as well. Do you think that seems to be a struggle as well? Like if they're asking for what they need and they're not getting it, does that seem to be a struggle with some of your clients too? Like they're learning to ask for and they have that confidence now to do it, but not getting what they're asking for back.
Yeah, that can be another frustration. You know, I asked, but I still haven't got it. And but it's not always about getting the answer. It's about developing yourself as a person and then being able to make decisions from that. You know, do I want to stay in this role with this person as my boss? Do I want to stay in this relationship when I've got someone who never listens to me, or in this friendship group, or whatever it is? Then when you're not constantly just feeling this is all my fault and I've got to make all the changes and everyone else is so much better than me at all of this stuff, then you can start making decisions that work for you. You can, I don't know, stay in the friendship or move on, find a different friendship group or find a different job where you feel more comfortable. I'm not saying it's easy, because it sounds easy when I say that, but it's that understanding of actually it's not just me. It's not just me that needs to change. And then from that gives you a bit more control and choice, rather than it all being over to the other person. If I was better, I would be doing things better. But it can be that you can receive back, actually, this other person's not giving me what I need. Where can I go elsewhere to get what I need?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's being able to say, no, I do have control and I have accountability, but I don't have blame for things. And I think that sometimes blame and control or responsibility can get so intertwined, and they can get used as the same thing, and they're not the same thing at all. And so being able to say, well, it is, for example, our locus of control. I remember in one of my first jobs, they had us do an activity where we had a list of different factors in our lives. And then it said, do you have control over this thing or not? And it was like, what time you wake up in the morning, what time you go to sleep, what kind of car you drive, what kind, all of these things. And I remember that I said, yes, I have control over it for every single one of them. And so when they were explaining the activity, they said, yeah, these are the ones you do have control over. These are the ones you don't. And I remember fighting them because one of them was, like, do you have control over your parents? And I said, well, no. But I said, yeah, I do have control over that in my life, because no, I don't have control over who my parents are, but I have control over how that relationship goes, because I have control over how much contact we have, right? I have control over how much we do together. And so there are those pieces that I think sometimes can feel like, well, I don't have control over those things, but we really do have control over some pieces of it. And just because we do acknowledge and accept that, yes, I have control over that part of it, that we don't have to take the blame along with acknowledging the control. And I think that's a hard thing to do, to filter out the blame part when we try to acknowledge and accept the control that we do have.
Yeah, and that's where perfectionism can come in as well. Like, if I could just do this better, then it would all be amazing. And so you try harder and harder, and just it's so exhausting because you're trying to be in control of that situation where there's only so much that you can actually do. Like you say, you only have control of part of the relationship. The other person has control as well. And it's being realistic about that and knowing the limits of it, but also accepting that there is a bit of responsibility on you, that, like you said with your parents, how much contact you have with people that maybe make you feel uncomfortable, and, you know, limiting that and not expecting things to be different, and not just kind of letting the other person take the whole agenda, and you're feeling very uncomfortable but not doing anything about it because you don't feel you can, that you feel you need to be better, and that would change it, rather than being realistic about the dynamic, I suppose.
So what are some things you might work on in counseling with someone who isn't getting what they're wanting out of a relationship and maybe wants distance from that relationship? Like, how can you work through that in your counseling services?
It's about looking at the patterns and how you react, like how you as the client react to that other person, and whether your reaction is helpful to you, really, and whether that links to past experiences, and it's a pattern that's developed over time as an adaptation, whether it's something that you're very familiar with, in terms of it's easy to understand this, but but not feeling strong enough to make the change because you don't feel, you know, it's just a known way of being, and it's working out what can be different. What do I actually need from relationships, and what can I give? So sometimes it can be about you don't have to be the only one that gives in the relationship. There can be, you can take as well, you can have needs, and you can share those needs within the relationship. And if you can't, what's going on there? You know, where's this pattern come from that you feel that you always have to give but you can't receive? It's quite interesting. And again, it's very individual. Everyone's got different patterns from their own life experiences.
Yeah, and then you've got another new blog post about the nervous system and how the nervous system can get overwhelmed with sensory sensitivities. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. Well, I guess with neurodiversity, that can be one of the features, that you can be, sometimes your senses can be much more acute than other people. Like, you might really find it difficult to have certain sensations on your skin. So it might be that wool makes you really itchy, or it could be that you're very sensitive to noise, or it could be that everything's got to be perfectly lined up on your bookshelf, because otherwise you see the one thing that's out of alignment and that just distracts you. And so you can't concentrate until it's put right. So I think they're all different kind of sensitivities that can just take you out of your concentration sphere and just disrupt that, you know, your concentration. In terms of trauma, the sensory sensitivity can be that your nervous system is activated all the time because you've learned that the world isn't safe. So you're just very aware and vigilant all the time, because your past experience has shown you that if you relax, something bad could happen to you, something that can really upset your sense of self or be physically or emotionally quite destructive. So you just learn to have that real hyper awareness all the time. So your nervous system is always on and always, you know, reacting more strongly, which is where emotional dysregulation can come in as well.
So what are some like coping strategies you might give to neurodivergent clients who are struggling with sensory overload?
Well, we kind of, it's not always easy to change sensory overload, because that's part of your body, isn't it? That's how your body reacts. So it can be just kind of, don't wear wool in that way, or what is it that distracts you in your environment, and it can be awareness, because sometimes there's a lack of awareness. It just like, oh, I can't get on. So we can kind of step back and think, well, what is it that is taking you away from the task that you need to do? What's stopping you? And maybe just kind of sit with the senses a little bit and think about how your body's working. So that would be in neurodiversity. Maybe in with trauma, it's about giving that sense of safety, really. And I guess what I really like working with is the window of tolerance. So there's your regulated self, and there's the self that goes really hyperactive. When you're triggered, you go up, you're really hypersensitive. Or when you're hypo, you're underreactive. You're kind of, we've got fight and flight, which is your hyperactive, and then your hypo is freeze. Or it could even be kind of like, make a relationship with the person who you're afraid of. They call it fawning, but I don't like that. It's a survival mechanism. It's not about that. It's about keeping that person in a zone of safety, really, for you. So it can be about trying to, what are the triggers that trigger you up from past experience, and what makes you go really low and lose all your energy and that you're exhausted. So with clients who've experienced trauma, we do a lot of work on that. And where do you feel safe in the middle, and what makes you feel safe? And then we look at past patterns, but things are different now. You're an adult now. If it's back to childhood experience, you have some control, and we look at where they do have control, and that can help bring that sense of safety of, actually, I can do something about this in a way that I couldn't when I was 8 or whenever it happened. So that there's two different ways of looking at sensory sensitivities, I think.
And I like that, the two different ways. And there's, the accommodation part really is that, like, well, let's eliminate some of those pieces, and then on the other side of it, let's build up that frustration tolerance, so that we are accepting the alert signals that our nervous system is sending to us. And so for example, when you were talking about it, I was thinking about socks, because socks can be very, very difficult when you have sensory sensitivity, especially with the tactile piece. If they're too tight, if they're too loose, if they're scratchy, if they're too soft, like just socks are very personal, and socks can be very difficult. And so examples of that are, like, I always make my husband throw away socks. If there are socks that I'll watch him put them on and then like take them off, put them back, and I'm like, throw those away. You know what I mean? But even him taking them off and putting them back was a huge step in acknowledging and accepting that, like, I don't like these socks, right? As opposed to like wearing them all day and just having that constant like feeling of agitation all day long. And we see that in behavioral health intervention with children and families, right? Like getting dressed in the morning, getting your shoes and your socks on in the morning can be such a challenge. And sometimes it is a matter of like, we keep the socks by the door now for my 9-year-old. And if there's ever ones that end up in that bin for all of the other ones are dirty, right? And we're doing laundry and those are the ones still in there, I'm like, those need to go, because I know that those are going to slow her down. And so being able to do that in the environmental sense, the environment around us, and say, okay, I'm going to get rid of the socks that make me feel this way. I'm worth more than what those socks are worth. It is kind of a revolutionary idea sometimes, right? Because it's like, those socks cost money and those are perfectly good socks. Okay, but I'm worth my well-being throughout the day. And that 2 seconds it takes to be like, oh, I hate these socks, and take them off and put them away every time, right, is worth more. That piece throughout the day is worth more than what those socks are worth. But sometimes we don't even value ourselves as much as we value a pair of socks. So, and then the other thing is that, yeah, when we have those socks on and we're going, I'm just going to tough it through because somebody gave me these Christmas socks or whatever it is, right? They have glitter sewn through them. Why? And so we go, I'm just going to wear them, right? And tough through them, and they're cute and all of that. Our brain is sending messages to us. Our nervous system is sending us messages all day long. You're in danger, you're in danger, you're in danger. Why aren't you doing anything about this? And we're hitting snooze on it all the time. We're ignoring those urgent messages that our nervous system is sending us. And our system thinks it's for survival, and doesn't understand. It hasn't evolved yet to understand that, like, no, it's just a sock, right? And so the more that we get used to just hitting snooze on that, the stronger that our nervous system sends that message to us. Like, why aren't you understanding? And so acknowledging that feeling, acknowledging those urgent messages that our nervous system is sending us, by being able to consciously say, okay, I hear it, right? I understand this feeling. I'm getting this feeling. I'm not in danger, right? I know that you're sending me a danger signal. I'm not in danger. Being able to do that, or tapping into our nervous system and saying, yeah, okay, I get this panic alert from my nervous system sometimes. And sometimes walking helps with that, because then my nervous system is like, oh, you're getting away from the danger, right? So, okay, now I can stop sending you that panic message. So it is both parts. It's extending that frustration tolerance by acknowledging the alert that we're getting, because as soon as we acknowledge it and process it, then our nervous system can stop sending it to us, because our nervous system is like, okay, she finally gets it, right? We can move on. But if we're hitting snooze all day and trying to power through that, that is exhausting, and we're just going to continue to get those urgent messages all day long. So I think really, really good points. And I think sometimes the one challenge, especially when we're working with families, is the idea that, well, if I make an accommodation for my child, then they're not going to learn, right, how to deal with things that don't go their way or that make them uncomfortable. And I always just like the kind of the way of thinking of that, of like, yeah, I don't want my child to learn, right, to just cope through things that make them uncomfortable. I want them to build up their frustration tolerance, because, yeah, they are going to go to a restaurant that only has big spoons. But I need to, in order for them to build up that frustration tolerance, they have to be comfortable and able to do that work. And that is the environmental piece. I think that's so helpful.
Definitely. And I like your image of just get rid of the socks that don't work for you and put socks in that actually do make your life easier.
Absolutely. Or like move the hook, my child would have a hard time in the morning because she'd have to jump up to get her coat off of the hook. And it would just frustrate her every time. We were like, we're moving that hook. So we moved the hook, because the placement of the hook is not more important than my child, right? But we as humans, we do that. We don't know that we're saying, oh, the placement of this coat hook is more important than how I feel when I'm hanging up my coat. But we do. We put things, we give them more importance and value than we give to ourselves. We do it just all day long without thinking about it.
And then the message over time is that you're less important and your needs don't matter.
Yeah.
And that's where problems can arise over a long period of time that are difficult to change, because it's almost a habit. You're not aware that that's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Because nobody would say out loud, hardly anybody would say out loud, right? This spoon is more important than I am. Or this sock is more important than I am. But every time we put on that sock we hate, or we eat yogurt with that spoon we hate, that is what we're saying. That is the message that we're sending ourselves, whether we're aware of it or not. So being aware of it is that key piece.
Yeah, I really like that. I'm going to keep that image.
Love that. So if you could give one suggestion about someone who might be on the fence about starting counseling, who might go, yeah, I feel like things are not set up in the world for me, right? Or I feel like I see things differently, or I'm exhausted all the time and I feel like that means there's something wrong with me. What do I do? What suggestion might you give that person if they're on the fence about counseling?
I would say be brave, give it a go, find a counsellor that you feel that you can relate to. And I think that's really important. You need someone that you feel gets you and understands you and is not judging you, it's trying to work with you. And I would say, yeah, give it a go. If you're curious about making life more understandable, if nothing else, and understanding yourself, it's really worth it. And it can be really life-changing and life-enhancing if you have that really good rapport with your counsellor, and you can, if you have time and it's the right time for you, I think just give it a go, try it out, because if you don't like it and you're not ready, you can stop. It's down to you. You have control over that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you are in the UK and you are interested in counseling with Liessa, you can look up her website at www.perspectivescounselingservice.co.uk for more information and to read her blog as well.
I'm Liessa Callaghan, and I need a counsellor.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the You Need a Counselor podcast. We are so grateful that you're here. You can also find and connect with You Need a Counselor on Facebook and Instagram. If you've enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to like, review, or leave a comment, as all of these things help others to find and benefit from the podcast as well. If you're in the state of Iowa and interested in mental health counseling or behavioral health intervention services, give us a call at 800-531-4236.